gentlemen, 2017 is upon us, and welcome to the 10 Count. I'm here at Hollywood Smoke, joined by Michael Baca and Doug Fischer of Ring TV. Showtime kicked off their campaign from the Barclays Center on January 14th, Saturday Night Fever indeed. And for the WBC and IBF Super Middleweight title, folks, it was a dead even draw. Badou Jack and James DeGale, nobody came out a winner. They both retained their titles, and in the IBF 130-pound title fight, Gervonta Davis with a 7th round stoppage over Jose Pedraza. Doug, going to the main event once again. You are not happy with the judges. Warren Kovalev hadn't really worn off yet, but you are under the belief and opinion it was clearly Badou Jack who won that fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought Badou Jack was the ring general. I thought, CompuBox shows that he threw more punches and landed more punches. Now, that alone is not going to sway me. We don't judge a fight by the number of punches thrown and landed in its totality. We judge each round separately, but really from about the 4th round to the 12th round, I thought it was Badou Jack who was the more consistent fighter, the fighter who was landing the meaningful, effective, hurtful punches. I thought he was the one, particularly over the second half of the fight, that was doing the majority of damage. I thought James DeGale started well, as he tends to do, and then I think he petered out. And he showed a lot of guts. He hung in there. He fought well in spots, but his spots were not strong enough to sway me in his favor in the close rounds. And I do acknowledge there were several close rounds in a very good fight.
Yeah, and I think professional boxing, it's not about the number of punches, the quality. Quality.
That's professional boxing.
I saw one guy get his tooth knocked out. You don't see that a lot in professional boxing with the gum shields, as they say in Britain, right? Or the mouth guards. Also, one guy's face was banged up.
Yep.
And the other guy really, to me, faded at the end. And you can make an argument both guys probably won at least 5 rounds.
Yes.
Or maybe 4 to 6, okay? They both had knockdowns. But I'll say one thing. I know which knockdown was much more damaging. I think it was the 12th round one scored by one Badou Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to that old adage Max Kellerman brought up. Who'd you rather be at the end of the fight? It was obviously you wanted to be Badou Jack, right?
I would say so. The problem that I have with James DeGale, he's southpaw and he's athletic and he's somewhat light on his feet. So people automatically assume that he's slick and that he's crafty.
That's skill. Yeah. Athleticism does not equal skill. It's the application of your boxing ability. If you can deliver it with a lot of speed and power and explosiveness, and if you're flashy, that's great. But we shouldn't take away from fighters who aren't flashy. And Badou Jack is not flashy. He's solid all around. He's not spectacular in any one category or athletic department. But he's a ring general. He's the guy in there doing the work. He's the one who was dictating the pace and the tempo of the fight. And he was the one who I think was the better boxer, because isn't boxing about hit and not get hit?
Yeah.
I thought he defended really well. I thought he blocked a lot of James DeGale's incoming punches. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but he was doing a lot of the damage, particularly with his body shots, particularly in close. He was the one who was dropping crisp, technically sound combinations where James DeGale, his jab really fell off after the first couple of rounds, and he was sort of flailing with one shot at a time, and they weren't landing consistently enough and with enough impact, in my opinion, to carry those rounds.
What does John Wooden once say? Never mistake activity for achievement. And there's a lot of times when James DeGale will throw a flurry of punches. If you actually look, they're not really landing all the time.
Hitting here. Right.
And there's a particular pattern with James DeGale fights. He's a great sprinter. He's a great mid-distance runner. He fades late in the second half of 12-round fights. Even against Durrell, dominated early, scored a couple of knockdowns. I thought kind of had to hold on to dear life to win a close decision. He does not have a great finishing kick. Badou Jack has come a long way since the Derek Edwards disaster about 3-4 years ago.
It wasn't even that long ago.
Right,
Steve.
and the question is at this point then, if Badou Jack is going up to 175, which I think he's made that very clear by vacating the title, he's now a light heavyweight, there's not going to be a rematch with that, which I find strange. I think this is an early candidate for 2017 Fight of the Year. Mike, do you see a guy in Badou Jack that can compete with the big guys from Andre Ward, Sergey Kovalev, and Adonis Stevenson? We've already seen him get dented. We've seen him get stopped. Does he fare any better at light heavyweight?
I think it depends. First, we have to see him at light heavyweight, and they're not going to throw him in there with the elites of Ward, Kovalev, Adonis.
They're calling out Stevenson.
Yeah, that's
sure.
the one they want.
I mean, well, Stevenson does need opponents in that realm of boxing, but I think a good opponent for Badou Jack for his first fight at 175 would be like Sullivan Barrera, who's coming off a big win off Vyacheslav Shabransky. And, we'll see. We have to see him at that weight. We have to see if his power translates up to 175.
Yeah, and as for Sully B, it looks like he'll be fighting Beterbiev in an IBF eliminator. So that's another good fight. So there's stuff going on. At 168, Doug, I got to tell you, I think post Andre Ward and Carl Froch, if James DeGale is the best super middleweight in the world, all I could say is one thing. Where have you gone, Joe Calzaghe? I don't see a great division.
Well, here's
I really
the thing.
don't.
The days of Joe Calzaghe, and he came after the era of Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank. The super middleweight division belonged to the UK boxing scene. And if James DeGale is our number one guy at 168 pounds, I think he needs to put away his passport, stop traveling to North America, go back home, fight in London, fight in Manchester, because there are a lot of attractive domestic fights for James DeGale. There's a rematch with George Groves. Chris Eubank recently moved up to 168 pounds. We don't know if he'll stay there, but if he wins his next fight, he might decide to remain at 168. There's Callum Smith.
I like him.
There's a lot of action to be had among British super middleweights. And, listen, they'll sell tickets there.
The co-feature on this night, literally, Jose Pedraza got run over by a tank. Gervonta Davis was simply too strong, too skillful, and too willful at the end. Mike, I don't remember a time, I don't think in years, when a legitimate champion who had a major belt from Puerto Rico, they got less mileage out of. And once he started to say, I don't want to make excuses, I said, oh, here comes the excuse. I had to drop a lot of weight. I think the way Pedraza was handled by his multitude of promoters, I thought bordered on malpractice.
Absolutely. He never even fought in Puerto Rico with the belt or anything. Fought twice in 2 years. It was a disgrace. And it showed against Gervonta Davis, who I thought had the performance of the weekend. It was a star-making performance, a statement. One interesting thing I liked about Gervonta Davis was that he had a lot of fight in him. He had a dog in him. He
fought angry.
He wanted to, yeah, exactly.
Like he had an issue with this promoter or something, didn't he? I don't know what was going on there.
That's a totally different story.
Dog, 130, you got Salido, you got Vargas, you got Miura, you got Vasil Lomachenko.
Yeah.
I think taking away high-tech Lomachenko, I know this might be premature, and I don't want to be prisoner of the moment. Again, taking away Lomachenko, who doesn't Davis compete with?
Oh, he's competitive with everybody in the 130 division except for Vasil Lomachenko. Lomachenko on another level, but Davis has a very special blend of speed, power, technique, and what he showed against Pedraza was that he can pace himself. He's not a complete front runner, and that poise, that will serve him well against more battle-tested 130-pound veterans who do not have his athleticism and natural talent. And I'm talking about sluggers like Takashi Miura.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. We know he can shine against somebody like Pedraza, who was, he was a young title holder, but not really a sensational talent. He was somebody who didn't have a lot in the way of speed or power. So what happens when a Miura hits him with that sledgehammer? Or what happens if he's in a dogfight with somebody like Francisco Vargas, who was just built for dogfights? He's gonna bleed, he's gonna mark up, but he's okay with spilling blood, and he's gonna spill some of Davis's blood. What happens after 6 or 7 rounds of a dogfight? We don't know that yet, but I know a lot of people are already ranking him ahead of guys like Takashi Uchiyama or Miura, or even believe that he would beat Vargas. I'm not ready to say that yet, but I do want to see those fights.
So there you have it. Showtime kicked off with a very strong card from the Barclays Center on January 14th. That's it for this edition of the 10 Count from Hollywood Smoke in Santa Monica. On behalf of Doug Fischer and Michael Baca, this is Steve Kim saying goodbye, everybody.